we will give everyone just a minute and then we will go ahead and get started. My name is Richelle Williams. I am the Aquatics and Youth Programs Coordinator at Western Washington University, which is in Bellingham, Washington, which is about 15 miles south of the Canadian border. Thank you so much for joining us today for, I think, either the 5th or the 6th Aquatics Roundtable. These have been really fun and pretty amazing to get everybody in the same space. Today, I have on my kind of agenda to talk with folks about what I have heard about reopening, I should say, for lap swimming, for group swim lessons, private swim lessons, and also if we could touch on how our cleaning procedures may or may not change moving forward. I also want to preface this with, I'm sure like most people, I've been having a very, very rough couple of weeks, and I don't have the emotional capacity to try and pull a lot of discussion out of people. So I would really appreciate it if folks are willing to share what you're currently doing, or your opinions on things, or what you've heard, so we're able to have a good discussion. Because I know we all have a lot of stuff going on, and we all have a lot of different circumstances, and people are in very different phases of opening or reopening. And so I think it's very beneficial for all of us to hear from each other, so that way we can create plans to advocate for ourselves within our departments and within our universities. So that's my big disclaimer, is I've cried a lot in the last couple of weeks. So if you can all do me a solid and actively participate today, if you have the emotional capacity to, I'd really appreciate that. So if you wouldn't mind putting your name, where you're from, in the chat, I would love to see who's here. Also, for anyone who hasn't participated before, this is being recorded, and this will be up for everybody to see probably by tomorrow. NIRSA is super quick with hopping on and turning these around, and also the chat will be available to see along with the recording. And if you have at any point a question, please put it in the chat. I'm going to try to keep an eye on that and make sure I am answering any questions that come up. And also, if I ask an open-ended question and you would like to unmute yourself, you're more than welcome to share. So yeah, that's me. Thanks so much, everybody. I appreciate you being here. So the first thing I wanted to talk about a little is opening up lap swim. So for us, we're in Whatcom County in Washington, and Washington State has 4 phases of reopening. They go 1 to 4, and each of them last a minimum of 3 weeks. And we just got cleared to move into phase 2, which is exciting because more things are opening up here. Pools are not slated to open until phase 3 here, and universities and our pool specifically wouldn't open potentially until phase 4. So we're hoping to open in August maybe with massively reduced hours, or September with full hours. That's what we're really hoping for. We've also been affected a lot by the student fees, because we're not asking for any student fees in summer because we aren't going to be open. So that will dictate the hours that will be able to be open when we are able to open. So I'm sure, much like everybody else, I'm sure everyone's been sitting in on lots of different webinars and all sorts of different people from different professional associations, and a lot of folks from NARP and different places have a lot of great ideas in how they're opening. So based off of a conversation that I had with a couple of different people from Texas and City of Austin and some presentations I watched, I came up with this diagram to show how I think we could potentially reopen our pool with limited capacity, and the way I defined social distancing, or keeping 6 feet away from each other, is our lane lines are a little over 6 feet apart from each other. So we would direct people to swim down the middle of each lane, and that would be 6 feet apart from each other. If our risk management came and told us that that wasn't adequate, then we would move to every other lanes. We are considering taping down 6-foot squares, as you can see right here, and also staggering where people are entering the pool. So lanes 1, 3, and 5 would enter from the deep end. Lanes 2, 3, and 4 would enter from the shallow end. We would have a max capacity of 3 people in our leisure area here. And this is not to scale, but this is our hot tub, which is the 3rd largest hot tub in the state of Washington, fun fact. And we would put markers on the sides of the hot tub indicating where people are able to sit, so that way they would have their own 6-foot square. We are also more than likely going to put 6-foot squares around the lifeguard chairs, so people are not going to be allowed to approach the lifeguards or go into their squares. We're also going to be putting a 6-foot bubble around their down guard desk. We typically have a whole bunch of equipment that's right up here, and we'll have an equipment return bucket for people to grab the equipment they want, use it, and then return it to a bucket located either here or down here, depending on what way they're entering and exiting the pool. And then the down lifeguard would immediately sanitize that equipment, let it dry, and then put it back to where it needs to go. I think like most pools, we have a ton of kickboards and that type of stuff. We would also ask people if they brought anything on deck to leave it and bring it in their little square. And the blue right here indicated is a bench. So every other place would have a bench that they could put anything that they're bringing on deck with them, and then we would sanitize that we have some heavy duty spray. And yeah, I know there's also been a lot of talk on the different places about, or different webinars and everything about making sure that showers are 100% mandatory, which I think all of us have probably been trying for most of our life and fighting that seemingly uphill battle with patrons to shower before they get into the pool. We're basically going to have the lifeguard posted up directing people to their lane lines, and also having them making sure that they shower. Like, they can go put their stuff down at their lane, and then they need to pivot and go shower if they haven't already showered before they come in. We are also thinking about some type of online registration system. I have been keeping tabs on Texas A&M, and they're using IM leagues right now as a online registration system to sign up for lane lines, or lanes to sign up for cardio equipment, any space within. Robert, you got something? No, I just saw a hand. Nope, okay, never mind. So yeah, if anybody from Texas A&M is on the call and would like to talk about it at any point, we'd love to hear from you. But also, I would love to hear from anybody that is either currently opened or has started to think about their reopening plans. Oh, SFA is also open. Thank you, Erin. Yeah, because so far, this is what I have come up with. And it's just kind of going to be up to our administration to see what they're okay with and what our risk management and legal are comfortable with as well. So is there anybody that is currently in the boat of opening that would be able to share with us?
So, howdy, CJ Stachurski from Texas A&M. Yeah, so we opened May 21st. Like Richelle said, we're using IM leagues, and we started off in a phase process of lap swimming. So we went every other lane in our outdoor pool and our indoor lap pool. We are now going, starting next week, to in every lane in both indoor lap and then outdoor pool. We do have a leisure side of our outdoor pool that we are not requiring a reservation for. We're only requiring it for lap swimming. Our lifeguard stands have a 6-foot box with stanchions around it, so that way patrons don't come up to them. And we're kind of doing the same thing with equipment in terms of they'll check out the equipment from us, but we have our kickboards and our pool buoys we have 4 different colors. So every hour that we are open, we have designated a specific color for patrons to use at the end of their reservation time. They will then put that equipment in a lane basket that we have at the end of their lane. Our staff will come behind them and dump it in the dirty equipment bin. We close for 3 hours throughout the day from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. During that time is when we disinfect all that equipment. But essentially what it allows us to do is if we are using the blue kickboard and pool buoy at 10 a.m., we're not reusing it again until 5 p.m. So the morning session will use all the 4 colors, and then we'll go on to the next kind of the PM part.
CJ, I have a quick question. Do you guys actually have the demand to open up all of your lap lanes? Have you guys been that busy?
We do, yeah. We've had a lot of people on our wait list. The only time slot that we're not thriving in the demand is our 8 p.m. time slot at the end of the day.
That makes sense.
Well, and my thought was also if people are desperate enough to come and swim and they are using the sign-up system, then that might begin to increase traffic during those typically lower use times as well. No, and that was also something our whole building was considering was shutting down midday, because again, we've been looking at A&M and we've been looking at other places that are currently opening to see how other folks are functioning, because it appears that when we do open, we'll have to have some time to fully sanitize the entire facility before a second wave of folks come in the day. Has anybody else opened or begun to plan their opening? I know Morgan had asked me if the rec center is going to be opening with the first phase of, or if the pool is going to be opening with our first phase of the rec center opening, and I don't know. I'm in a position right now where we are trying to make sure that everything kind of opens together, but that's something that we could be 2 to 3 months away from, and we don't know that yet.
Hey, Richelle, I'll talk real quick on Eric Becker at Marshall University. We opened up this past Monday for Aquatics. We've been open for about 2 weeks for the facility. And a lot of the changes that we've made, you've already talked about, so requiring showers mandatory. We have a pathway going around the pool deck that they'll enter on one side, exit on the other. We only have 3 lanes, so it's 1 per lane. We do have a leisure area and a vortex, and so that's 6 people maximum in that. Reservations for everything, so you can reserve up to 15-minute time blocks, up to an hour for lap swim, and then 45-minute time blocks 1 time a day for the leisure area. And one of the big changes we actually made, and this was with a lot of conversations, was lifeguards are not wearing hip packs right now, only the supervisor, so that all supervisors can have their own, because we also have a first aid trauma bag that is directly in the lifeguard office about 40 feet away. And so I know someone had mentioned having fanny packs. to limit that cost of having to buy, 15 to 20 pieces of equipment for every single person. Only supervisors are having their own hip pack, and then that trauma bag will be used in any emergency situation.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. And then I have also some of the questions that I've also seen, which maybe some other folks can answer. If you have a guard office, how many student employees will you be allowing in there at a time? Has anybody looked at this scenario? We have a guard room, and we're only going to be allowing 2 people in the guard room at a time because it is a very large guard room, but it'll basically be somebody on one side and somebody on the other side if they don't want to stand at the door and wait for the other person to come out.
Hi everybody, Noah Rogers, Aquatics GA at Virginia Commonwealth. To answer your question, Richelle, how we are controlling traffic flow flowing in and out of the lifeguard office. Because our office is quite small, we're gonna make a restriction for just one guard or employee at a time in and out of there. And we're encouraging them to keep all of their personal belongings in our wet classroom because it's adjacent to the pool and nobody goes in and out.
Awesome, thank you. And that's a good follow-up to the next question. So if folks also have guard rooms and want to answer that, and then also a next question is, do you have lockers for your student employees? And if so, will you be allowing them to use them once they return? Which Noah, you touched on a little bit where you said you are allowing them to put their belongings in the wet classroom. So we do have student lockers at Western, and they're very small and very crammed together. So part of what I'll be doing over the summer is going through the entire guard room and pulling anything that is trash basically, and creating bigger cubby spaces in all of our shelving for our students to basically temporarily leave their stuff while they're working. I've worked at one pool that didn't have permanent employee cubbies, and you came in, you put your backpack on a hook, you kept all your stuff nice and neat, and then you left with all of your belongings. And folks always like to have their own space, but I think during ye olde pandemic times, that might be a good thing to think about, is just having spaces where if you have like open mesh shelving where someone can put a backpack, put all of their stuff, and then they can disinfect it when they leave, that might help space things out a little bit more, and also make it much easier to sanitize 45 small little stinky lockers, which is what we usually have. Has anybody else thought about their locker situation or any other employee belonging situation?
Hey Richelle, this is Mark Miller at Indiana University. Our locker room situation is likely to be an IKEA-esque situation where you come in one way and then you just have to go with that flow. There'll be opportunities to cut back into the locker rooms without having to go back up into the lobby. But essentially, it's one way into locker rooms, one way out of the locker rooms, which is going to create a little bit of a headache because the locker rooms exit onto the pool deck. So we'll have to have extra supervisory hours on the pool deck. But so far, that's what our environmental health and safety has told us to do.
Awesome, thanks so much, Mark. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about not opening locker rooms at all, or having them open in a very limited capacity as well. So I think an IKEA-esque Aero situation might be a good middle ground for people. Has anybody opened and had restrictions on their locker rooms, or had thought about taking locker rooms completely off the table?
This is Jillian at Xavier University. We haven't opened yet, but we are going to be closing all of our lockers. So no locks are going to be available. And then what we're going to do is create designated areas, safer areas within our floors so people can put their backpack on the ground, like our patrons. But we're also going to try to just do heavy communication. Our university is really small, so we're hoping with communication, people will drop their belongings off at their house before they come in anyways. But we are going to remove all lockers.
ASU is also doing no locker rooms. We have other bathrooms in our facility, so we can keep those open, but we're going to close down our locker rooms.
Awesome, thank you.
At Texas, it's not our choice. The governor made it no locker rooms are allowed to be open, so that's one of the ones that's off the table for us. So we can't have locker rooms and shower areas.
Yeah, and I know some people have like been pretty affronted or pretty like upset about that. But if any of y'all did swim team, like you show up in a swimsuit, you throw your towel on, you maybe pull a sweatshirt on, you look janky, like it's fine. It's not super comfortable, but I think especially if you're gonna swim, like people will be okay. I'm hoping that everything will be fine and locker rooms will be at full capacity by winter, because that will be a different story, because I don't know many normal non-swim team people who own parkas. So
I have a question about, everybody's talking about no locker rooms, but we have a lot of faculty staff, majority of my users at UK are faculty staff, and I'm probably going to get a lot of pushback for that. So right now our locker rooms are going to be open. Granted, we'll have limited number of people using the aquatic center during the day. Of course, we don't even have our varsity training schedule yet, so I don't know when we'll be open for rec swim, which I'm sure a lot of you guys that are also dealing with your varsity teams, they don't know how long it's going to take to get all their athletes through the day. But I think that's going to be a huge pushback for me or impact my university if I can't provide a locker room space for those that are on campus and want to work out who are students, faculty and staff. Is anybody thinking along those lines? Just asking.
Tish, I think that's a really great question, because faculty staff tend to be the folks with the loudest opinions, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I think we have a few universal changing rooms, and one of the questions I have seen on here is that folks are asking, like, how are we going to be disinfecting, or how are people going to be disinfecting the showers? And for our universal changing rooms that have showers in them, after so we're going to more than likely keep those open. And I think that would be the easiest thing, is if you're able to have that universal kind of like gender neutral space, where that if you have something with a shower and a place to change, that's going to be easier to manage and to keep clean than an entire locker room. Because I love Trader Joe's and I go there a lot. But I think Trader Joe's is, as far as grocery stores go, is a gold standard of sanitation. They're standing there with a cleanly sanitized cart when you walk in. You see people wiping stuff down as they're putting it on the shelves. Then you give somebody your cart as you exit the facility, and they're wiping the cart down as you are leaving the facility. So I think that model, a lot of us will probably utilize at some, whether that be, I really hope we don't get to the point where we have to have like locker room monitors, like somebody just standing by the showers there to spray showers down after people leave, which I think is why a lot of us aren't opening until phase 3 or phase 4 of our plans. So yeah, locker rooms are going to be tricky, I think, but we'll see. Does anybody have anything else?
One more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
We were thinking about closing down. We had a total of 12 showers in each of ours, so we're going to obviously do the social distancing in there, but also provide the spray bottle. So hopefully they'll have the opportunity to clean it themselves. With some of this ownership of cleaning things, I really feel like needs to go back to the user. I mean, my gosh, we can't do everything for them. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have the money to have a locker room attendant. But I mean, that's just one of those things where I feel like it's wonderful to go into Trader Joe's. I'm with you because I see the guy cleaning it. I like that. But I'm also going, God, did he really clean that well enough for my standard? You know, you got to ask that. So, you know, hopefully we can get people to start taking their own ownership to clean these things. If we provide it, they ought to be able to do it. I mean, sorry, but.
No, and I agree. And that, I think that's a really great idea, Tish, that I haven't actually thought about, was having just spray bottles, much like you would have for cardio equipment, but having those at, you know, in front of all of the shower stalls, and having signage asking people to spray their showers down once they're done using them. I think that's a really great idea. I've also seen somebody posted in the chat that the restroom portion of the locker room will be open, but no showers will be available, and people are looking at a portable rinse shower on deck, but no plans have been set. And then I think I've mentioned before, we have changing tents on our pool deck that were put up to mitigate flow from group lessons a couple years ago. They look like early 19th or 18th century, like beachside changing tents that you would find on like an old-timey beach, and they work great for kids with families or for individual people. So that is going to be another option that we will have for available for people. We just need to space ours out a little bit more. And I got those on Amazon, and they were, I think, $85 a piece. So Amazon's great. Looks like FSA has outdoor showers. That's awesome. I wish our weather was nice enough to have an outdoor facility. And it looks like there's been some talk of, in the chat, of having either rentals or outdoor or external groups using your facility. Does anybody have anything that they've had? Like, I feel like maybe if you have a varsity swim team or swim team rentals or anything like that, that's a good situation to maybe share with folks to kind of see how you've navigated sharing your pool space during this time. Is anybody in that situation that would like to share what they've kind of been through? Nope. Well, something cool that I've seen, and hopefully everybody has seen this as well. I'm going to pull this up really quickly. Some folks in Alaska got real handy and created plexiglass lane line barriers. So they just went to the hardware store, got some 4x4s, and put some plexiglass in there, and then put some, I think I read that it was some like foam on the ends of it, so if you hit it with your hands, you weren't slicing your hands open. But they, per the guidelines within Alaska, in order to get their seniors in to start prepping for college swimming, they put those on the beginning and ends of the lap lanes, and those helped them be able to safely open, so that way they didn't have to stagger people on each side. So if people are asking about, like, or if there's a concern that people are going to be on the wall and maybe they're spraying because they have water in their mouth and they're breathing or talking, I've brought this up, and this is something that we could pretty easily fashion in-house. So I can make sure to add this to, I'll add this link into the chat, because I think they put dimensions and all that sort of stuff. So that was something kind of cool that I saw recently that I thought would be interesting for folks. yeah, Megan, the plexiglass thing was so cool. When I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that is so, I love pool people. We're just gonna do it. Cool, so
I was going to talk about the lifeguard classes since
yes, please.
people are asking. So at A&M, we upgraded all of our mannequins to QCPR. We already had iPads, so we're able to monitor them doing CPR utilizing the iPads. Our pool deck is also large enough, so we hosted the class on our pool deck. So that way we could space participants 6 feet apart throughout the course. We left it only open to a small number of individuals. So we only had in this class 5 participants. And then we also have full-size mannequins that we utilize as the victims when appropriate. We purchased a bunch of these masks from Waterman back before when things kind of started shutting down. And so we provided all of our participants with a mask. We'll clean it at the end of the day, just like we do for all of our staff. We required them to wear gloves whenever they were not in the water as well. And then when it came to some in-water rescues, the masks are somewhat breathable, but they are hot. So we've told our staff, like, we understand at times if you need to like pull it down just to get some air, you can, but it does need to be on. They don't have to wear them on stand though. But it is hot in the class, so for all the rescues, we did it as in the book because chlorine, and there's no study showing that COVID can transfer within chlorine, with chlorine killing it. We were okay with being able to teach the rescues as is, but for like our current staff, we have decided that the staff is only going to do rear rescues if they were ever having to go into the water. We also asked them to bring like their own writing utensils, so that way we didn't have to sanitize afterwards. And then for the test, we just disposed of the papers afterwards as well, instead of just using a master copy. Every participant had their own tube as well. So once they had a tube, that was their tube for the rest of the day. Same thing with the mannequin. Once they had a mannequin for CPR, that was their mannequin throughout the rest of the course. We had them all also disinfect them themselves instead of us disinfecting it for them.
Awesome, thank you. And I think some of those guidelines, like everybody having their own tube and disinfecting their tubes and all of that type of stuff, is something we'll be implementing when we open for lap swim, where my lifeguards will have a tube that they start out with. I'm also going to have, I forgot to mention this, I'm going to have a spray bottle at the desk and also at the stand that they're at, so that way when they are rotating from up guard to down guard, they're going to be spraying down the area that they were sitting at, so that way they're not sitting in each other's germs. And yeah, I don't think we will be offering American Red Cross classes for our health department guidelines for a while, because that is not until a phase 4, that's a phase 4 activity for us within our county. But I think all the things you did, I think that was a really crafty way to do it within our current circumstances, and that's really cool. And CJ, you had said that it was the automated CPR dummies, is that correct? That you had upgraded to?
Yeah, so we have 2 big reds from the Red Cross, and then we had of just the little hands that we upgraded. And those kits were like $74 a piece, I think, to upgrade. And so we upgraded all of the mannequins that we had. And it's literally just a brand new chest piece that you take out the old one and you put the new one in.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And I think and that's going to be another thing for us, is when we all go back, or when I go back in phase 4, hopefully enough for phase 3 or phase 4, hopefully enough restrictions will be lifted within my county where we can make sure that we are able to practice safely for everybody. So, and if folks aren't looking at the chat, there's a whole bunch of really good links and comments and information in the group chat right now. So the next thing that I kind of had on the agenda as far as really interesting webinars that I have been in on, I sat in on a Red Cross webinar that was featuring, I can't remember his name, but it was this really knowledgeable person from California who seemed to know anything and everything about aquatics, and he was tasked with creating a swim lesson reopening plan for his Parks and Rec. And he came up with some really interesting ideas and some based off of the stuff that we had talked about a little bit in previous webinars, and also based off of the information that he talked about. I created another diagram that I'm going to go ahead and bring up here. So some of the main points that he had talked about was that it is really important that as soon as we are able to start offering some lessons in a safe capacity, that there will be a very high demand for it, and that it is pretty important that we try to help mitigate risk within our communities as soon as we can, because even if we're able to offer pilot programs and serve a limited amount of people, that's still better than serving nobody. So some things that were mentioned were, which I know we've mentioned here before, basically anything under level 3 will be a parent and child class. And he spent a long time talking about educating parents about the best way, because it'll be a teacher teaching the parents to teach the child, which may seem like a lot, but also if the parents aren't comfortable swimming themselves, then it's a good opportunity for them to learn skills, become a little bit more comfortable in the water, and also be very engaged in what their children are learning about. So my thoughts were having a session A and a session B, and we typically offer 25-minute lessons, and usually we would have level 1 right here, level 2, level 3. We'd usually have level 4 in the second lane, and then we typically have level 5 and then level 6 on the far side of the pool, and we would usually have 3 lanes open for lap swim. So when we have swim lessons, there's a ton of stuff going on. Usually there's just a huge amount of people, and we are considering, or this will be my proposal for reopening swim lessons, where during A time slots we have lessons or levels 1, 3, and 5, and that'll be on the steps right here. Level 3 will be in the first lane, so they'll potentially have the full lane, and then level 5 will be in the far lane, so that'll still open up a lane or 2 for lap swim if we're at that point. And this will also give us more than enough space to have parents and children in the water, and also be able to put up a barrier or a lane rope to separate levels 1 and 2, or level 1 and 3, and then give us 15 minutes to disinfect everything for the B session. So what was mentioned in the webinar that I attended was having a bucket and everything that people use put in that bucket, and also making sure that the swim instructors don't take 15 toys for their classes. Make sure that they have the 2 to 3 things that they absolutely need to have. They put that in their space, and then they immediately put that away. And once they're in their space and they're ready to go, there's no going back. That's all they can use. So again, having those buckets for used equipment, having the equipment put in that space so that way it can be cleaned. And then during the B session, have level 2. And again, we have a little bit of a leisure area that's 3.5 feet. So having level 2 here, having level 4 in the deeper section of the first lane, and then having level 6 in the far side of the pool. Because level 4 and level 6 would have instructors, 4, 5, and 6 would have instructors outside of the water. And if they needed to demonstrate something, the kids would get out of the water, and then so that way they could see the demonstration effectively. And this would also include, again, having our lifeguards here with that 6-foot tape, having another guard here with that 6-foot tape area. We have an emergency exit off the back with a patio, and you can access that patio from the road. So we are, or part of the proposal will be having all of the swim lesson participants come in through that back pool entrance, because typically they would walk in through the front of the building. They would have to change in the locker rooms. Well, we ask that they come in their swimsuits because they don't have access to locker rooms before they get into the pool as we have it now. But instead of having them walk all the way through the building and touch things and all of that sort of stuff, have them come in the back entrance where the swim lesson coordinator would be waiting, have them check in there, have access to the changing tents, the universal changing room, and all of that sort of stuff, but keep them out of the main building and just keep them right there in the pool. And we typically have, and they also never have access to the hot tub, so that's completely off limits and that's not there. But yeah, we usually have 3 sessions of swim lessons. So parent and taught is usually at 4:30. Then we usually have A, B, and C at 5, 5:30, and 6 with 25-minute lessons and 5-minute passing periods. And now we would do 2 cycles of A, B running from 4:30 starting parent and taught, giving us 15 minutes, and then staggering the 25-minute lessons with 15 minutes in between for sanitizing, ending everything at 7:35 instead of 6:30, which is when we normally would close things. So this is a lot, and I think it's worth it, because I think offering swim lessons is a really valuable service that all of us provide to the community and to our campus community. And it's a way to make revenue. And I think if we are pushed to a position where we're offering levels 1 through 3 as a parent and child type of a lesson, then there's something to be said for potentially helping parents gain some level of skill and comfort in the pool that they might not have been previously forced to do. So this is what I have kind of come up with as far as youth group swim lessons. And our adult group swim lessons would, and we max cap that at 4, always a 4-to-1 ratio. And our adult swim lessons are usually either in the leisure area or in the far lap lane. And that would be still a person. I always like to have my instructors in the water, but this might be a situation where the instructors demo in the water and then are on deck for the rest of the time. And private swim lessons, I think we are proposing that if we determine the skill level to be under that level 4, then it would be a private swim lesson that is parent and child. Cool. So, yeah, that is what I have for my plans that I have merged from the many different things that I have heard and will potentially do. But again, that's just a proposal and who knows. Yes, Erin.
So I kind of want to go back a little bit to like reopening and we have a plan in place for what happens if an employee were to test positive, but we're still trying to figure out what happens if a participant or a patron tests positive. We're kind of looking to the university for some guidance on this, but has anybody started talking about this? Like, what if a patron tests positive? What are you going to do with your facilities? Is anybody talking about that yet?
I attended a CDC Stakeholders of Higher Education Zoom. It was, I want to say, last Friday, and they talked about just if a person at the university tested positive and how to respond, and it was more about residents. But if you know, like they mentioned, being able to track where in the facility they go. So if they swipe into each specific room separately, then you know which areas to kind of quarantine off, let that area be for 24 hours, and then disinfect it before reopening. And they also mentioned the university should have a plan in place to have a quarantine location for that student, particularly where they can be isolated from the rest of campus. But that wasn't an external patron, it was more about students.
Yeah, and the question is, okay, so they're in the facility and then they don't test positive for like 10 days later. And then what does that look like? Now we've got 10 days worth of patrons that have been in there. And so I know it's a hard one. And I saw, who was it, Eric? You're sending into Centers for Disease Control, and they're going to tell you how to proceed. You're not going to have a campus-wide way to do it within the facilities.
Our director told us that those steps would be taken. We would not make any decisions ourselves. They would come and look at the case and then tell us what to do, whether we close, whether we quarantine people, anything like that.
Hey, Aaron, this is Francis from California. We had there's another in Parks and Rec. This happened to them where they opened and.
Hey, Francis, I think we might have lost you.
Francis, you muted yourself.
Sorry. So they opened and then somebody came into the facility, was in contact with their entire staff, and they ended up having to close. Their entire staff had to quarantine for 14 days. And they said it was a big ordeal because they did not have a specific policy in place, and it was an aquatics facility. So I know for us, we're looking to the university specifically for this, and we've been told that it will be a university policy. And then it would go to, we're not going to the CDC, we're going to the county office. That's what we've been told up to this point.
We've been told that our UHS is going to do contact tracing for the campus. So that's where we have to tell OHP, which is like our occupational health, and then it goes from there. But there's been no directive given yet as to what happens to the facility if somebody was in it. So that I was just kind of wondering. And the other thing, just to kind of talk off of what Francis said, because we don't want our entire staff to go down if something were to happen like that, we're doing orange and white days. So like I'm on an orange day and then other people aren't, like we're splitting the staff so that if something were to happen, only half the staff would go down so that we're still able to have a facility open. We're even going to try that with the student staff. Don't know how it's going to go, but yeah.
We had a discussion about trying to switch out our staff. This group only works on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and this group we've been trying, but man, their schedules are going to be rolling all over the place. That's going to mean instead of maybe a staff of 50, we might need a staff of 25 if we're going to be limited that way. And then boom, everybody's paying for the background check. We'll have all these kids that maybe only get 2 or 3 hours a week to work, but that going back to the issue about what directives have we gotten to if we get a positive test in our facilities, I keep thinking, like you said, it could be 3 days till somebody comes back and says, oh, Billy Bob was in your pool and they're tested positive. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, we've just let, X number of people. Is it our responsibility, or is that UK's responsibility to let all those, we download our card swipes and we figure out, let the varsity team know, because we're a shared facility. So we've just impacted our varsity program. So we've had discussions this week with our varsity saying, how are you guys going to keep us safe? If you're going to open up our swimming pool to the rest of the universities. So we're kind of walking on some thin ice there, trying to coordinate that effort to make sure our varsity athletes, they're getting the temperature checked every time they come in for a workout, but we aren't doing that for our rec swimmers. So maybe.
Well, and the other thing, I've worked at shared facilities. It is not their pool. It is a shared pool with everybody. And so you are doing what you can to keep everybody safe, and varsity athletes are not special. They're just athletes. And I tell my staff, you're valued, but you're not special. And I've been saying that for over a decade. And I think that especially applies to varsity athletes, because once they graduate, nobody cares that they swam. Nobody cares. But yeah, we should do everything in our power to keep everybody safe. Sorry, that's my hot take about that. I spent 2 years having to deal with that, and I was like, not today, Satan. So yeah, I think I've seen, so something I've seen that kind of rolls all of that together is Nathan said that they're using the process for staff and swimmers and users. They're planning on closing for 2 weeks with a deep clean if somebody in the facility is found to be tested positive. That happened to us when 2 of my staff members tested positive, like right before the whole country shut down. I was told on a Sunday, I think 12th, or maybe it was the 14th of March, 2 of them were like, hey, by the way, my roommates tested positive. And then I had to call the building, I had to call the director, and then everything kind of rolled down from there, and we were going to shut down for 2 weeks, and then we were shut down by the governor. The whole state was. So I think 2 weeks is very conservative as far as closures. It all depends on what your local health county guidelines are. And I know Austin, Texas is being very conservative in opening, because I have a friend who is in aquatics with the city, and yeah, they're being very conservative with opening their facilities. And then at Western, we've actually been given no direction as far as what we do if somebody in the building tests positive. We're being left to figure that out ourselves and then pass that up through risk management, and then they will let us know if they think it is up to par or not. So, yeah. We've got about 5 more minutes. So I think making sure we share resources as far as coming up with that uniform, it's really interesting to see that like sometimes universities give you nothing, and then other universities are just really, really giving you absolutely all of the direction. So yeah, is there anything else in the last 5 minutes that anyone would like to ask? Yes, Fish, go for it.
Hey, University of Kentucky, there is discussion amongst the higher ups in the administration that we do not allow non-UK activities inside, non-UK groups participating in indoor activities, which when I think of a non-UK group, that would be my age groups. Just curious if any other universities or facilities if that's kind of, it's a draft. I'm not trying not to get hysterical about it, but if any other universities are discussing having non eliminating non-UK groups on campus?
At the University of Cincinnati, we're not sure yet. Normally, like, we do a really hefty amount of rentals. Like, I would pack in everything I could from, in the lap pool from like 4 to 9 o'clock at night, and tons of stuff in our leisure pool too. But we're at a point where I have a clinic scheduled for like the last week of August and middle of September that was booked back in January. And they reached out to me recently, it's kind of saying like, hey, we're super pumped that pools are reopening. Sure hope we can start to market this. And I kind of told them to do it at their own risk. And that if they could find another pool in Cincinnati to host their reservation, it would be in their best interest to do so, because I can't tell them for sure that we're actually going to be open. And I might wind up having to tell everybody who rents from us in fall that they should do that. We just don't have any info yet, but right now it looks like we're probably going to be pretty limited to just UC campus related groups and events.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and also something that I know folks are doing with gyms that aren't necessarily campus rec is having a COVID waiver. I go to a gym a little bit north of where I live, and we're going to have to sign a COVID specific, like, risk related waiver when we start up activities again there.
Is anyone having their staff sign a COVID related waiver specifically for our lifeguards who have the duty to respond and break their social distance guidelines?
Is that even legal, Jillian?
Yeah, I don't think that I don't think we're allowed to do that.
Because like, doesn't that run the idea of like basically waiving workman's comp, which I don't really think you can ask people to do.
We're having a meeting next week with our legal team. So I know we're talking about waivers in general. I just didn't know if anybody was doing waivers within their student staff, whether they're cleaning or providing care.
And the other big thing about waivers is you got to make sure that your state is okay with waivers, because I know, like, when I was in Virginia, waivers don't even mean anything. So. Oh, I'm not asking the staff to wear orange and white on certain days. We're splitting ourselves into orange and white teams. That's just what we're calling it. It's like Team A and Team B, but we're orange and white because we're University of Texas. So that if one part of our staff gets exposed, the whole staff doesn't go down. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting idea, because that's not something that I had thought about or heard about groups doing. But I mean, it's better to have potentially half the people exposed than everybody, because that would be bad. We've got about 1 more minute, 2 more minutes. Is there any final questions or comments that anyone would like to throw out there?
I was just going to say, Towson University isn't doing events this is Aquatics. We're not having any external swim meets through the fall, so I actually am going to reach out to the YMCA, who usually does a December swim meet with us, and then we'll be reassessing probably sometime in fall to see what's going to be happening for the spring semester. So the focus right now is just Towson University students.
Yeah, and I think that's this will be a great time for all campus recreations and universities to hopefully kind of circle back to everyone's, mission and vision, and focus on our students for fall term and our communities probably for the foreseeable future. So it'll be an interesting dynamic as we move forward. So we will that's all the time we've got for today. So we're going to go ahead and wrap everything up. We will schedule one of these out probably in July, because hopefully by July some more people have been opening, or you've begun to create reopening plans or have solid guidelines for what you're doing in the future. I really appreciate everybody actively participating today. Thank you so much. I really love doing these, but it was kind of that moment when this was happening where I was like, I might cry. So I really appreciate everyone's support and everyone being here today, and we're all in this together. And yeah, I appreciate all of you. So thank you so much, and look out for that date in sometime in July. Thanks everybody, and have a great day.